In this movie, we're going to now focus on the assessment criteria of the tutorial book debate. And the first criteria, which is highlighted here in yellow, is asking each group in the tutorial to explain their week's weight relating to last week's and to justify the changes that they're making. We're going to do that in a top-down fashion, and consequently we're going to start at the top with the global economy. Why start with the global economy with macro news? The reason for that is that the global news can influence the equities most dramatically. So we can understand, by understanding what's occurred in the global financial markets over the last week, by considering global stock markets, bond markets, currency markets, commodity markets, any relevant macroeconomic data released and any relevant global news stories, and thinking about how they affect our portfolio into the future, we can progress from the top down with justifying our portfolio choices. One of the things that we first have to do is to decide where we are in the business or economic cycle. And the business or economic cycle refers to the fluctuations of economic activity over long-term growth. Okay. Here is an example of the economic cycle where we look at deviations of the log gross national product around trend. And you can see that there are these mean reversions. There are peaks, and then there are troughs, and peaks and troughs over time between 1955 and in this data 2005. And this is known as the economic cycle. Now, we can abstract or simplify the economic cycle by using what is known as the economic clock. So as the clock goes around, we can see different economic phenomena occurring. Rising real estate at the top, then rising interest rates, falling shares, falling resources, falling employment, rising shares again, rising resources, easier money, and then all the way to the top, where the economic cycle repeats on the clock. So the question is, where are we on the clock? And what you'll see is that our two groups, Group A and Group B, believe we're in different places on the clock. Group A believes we're at the bottom, we're right at the trough of the economic cycle, we're at the bottom of the clock at around 9, where we're starting to get rising resources, and that'll lead to rising overseas reserves and so on. Group B, on the other hand, believe we're at about 5 o'clock on the economic clock, and we're still trending down in the economic cycle. So 5 o'clock is around here where we've got falling employment and so on. Who's right? Well, we don't know, but you'll see that the basis of their debate is predicated on where they are in the economic cycle, and consequently the basis of their investments. So they will be looking at this investment table and they'll justify their investment table. However, before they do that, each member of the group, prior to the actual tutorial, will be required to do what's known as a individual portfolio quiz, where each member of the group looks at and completes an individual portfolio quiz. And this will be available on Blackboard on the website for the subject. And there is a section 2, which focuses on the global economy, and it requires you to do all sorts of things. For example, click on this link and you'll see a number of different videos. Look at the videos and pick the one which you find most interesting. Now, in this particular example, Group A has chosen the video on the stress test of the US banking system, and it notes the financials have dropped more than 8% after the stress test news, which is relevant to their portfolio because they have decided to go short 20% on NAB because of this news, and you'll see one of the members of Group A talk about that. But there are all sorts of other questions. Questions 4 to 5 look at things on like the subprime crisis and real estate. Question 6 looks at equities. Question 7 looks at US and interest rates and global interest rates. In question 8, question 9 looks at global commodity prices. Question 10 looks at currency fluctuations over the last week. Question 11 then asks you to focus on how all of those issues that you've looked at will affect your portfolio, and it asks you to rank them. In question 12, based on the ranking in question 11, you're asked to briefly explain what the most important global factor is and why it is. And what you can see here is Group A has chosen to focus on the financial firms and commodity prices. And it talks about how the stress test and how commodity prices will affect mining stocks like BHP and so on. Okay, so now that the members of Group A have individually done the individual portfolio quiz, they will then meet in the tutorial to discuss their weights for the week, to work out where they are on the economic clock, and then to justify their weights to the rest of the tutorial and to defend and attack the other groups in the tutorial. What I've got next for you is an example of a justification of the weights, and you will see in this video a justification of where the group believes the economy to be on the economic clock, and then they'll look at each sector. One, go.
Yeah, first thing I want to do is take a look at our macroeconomic viewpoint and where we believe that the economy lies currently on the macroeconomic cycle. So if we look at the cycle moving like this, our viewpoint is that we're currently about here. We're right down the bottom of the economic cycle, but we believe that we've hit the bottom and that we're on the up and up. We can see that long-term interest rates are increasing, which suggests positive macroeconomic, that we're heading into the upswing. We've seen the Australian exchange rate go up the Australian dollar, which also suggests positive, and commodities prices in the short term have been heading up. So we think all these factors are pointing to this upward trend. For that reason, first we're investing a lot of money in BHP because we think by taking advantage of the increase in commodities that's caused by this macroeconomic increase, we think that BHP will go up from that. We also think that Woolworths, consumer staples, will also go up, maybe not as much as BHP, and we're reducing our exposure to cash because that's more of a defensive measure, and we're trying to be more positive in our viewpoint. Financial, we are going negative, even though from a macro viewpoint we maybe should go positive. We think that the problems that NAB has overseas and its exposure, which we'll talk about later, mean we should still go negative in NAB.